Hi, my name is Matt Ford. I'm the founder of Origin Story, and this is the behind the scenes video for Wouldn't It Be Cool? An AI generated climate change series. And the idea for this project started here on this website, the IPCC. Throughout my career, a large part of my job has been reading client reports or large creative briefs and trying to distill that down into a compelling and concise story of maybe a minute or two. For me, the white whale of these kind of reports has always been the IPCC reports, because it basically encompasses everything we know in the world about the current state of climate science. And these reports are thousands of pages long. On their website, you switch through, there's just all of these different topics. So I took a bunch of these. I wanted to dig into them and create a notebook LM project and just start peppering it with questions and trying to figure out what are the most visually compelling elements that are in here, what are interesting solutions and climate adaptation approaches that are in here, and this just like started as the early brainstorming that is going to be sort of what fuels a lot of the stories throughout the rest of this series. Once I sort of knew how I wanted to do this, the next thing was to just start working on the pilot, start working on what was the visual style and tone going to be. And this is where I really love where AI workflows have sort of changed the way I've worked in the past. In the past, there might be some sketch storyboards, but most of the work on a project is with the video. It's either something you shot or it's archival video, and you're taking all of that and trying to edit on the timeline and figure out your story. Now so much of what I'm doing is in image generation, and this is Adobe's Firefly Boards, and this is where I started just playing around with some really basic ideas. I would do this alongside my traditional writing technique for these kind of shorter videos, which is just a two-column approach. You have the audio, so whether it be voiceover, music, sound effects, dialogue, all of that's on the right. I've always believed that audio is at least half of the most important part of a video. So really nailing that script, getting all the elements right there, and then figuring out how is that going to play with the visuals. What is the balance going to be between those two? How are they going to work off each other? And my favorite part now is that, like, I didn't used to have a storyboard column in the past. Now it's really easy to generate these images and really think through, like, is this working? And am I getting the right visual results? Like sometimes it gives me ideas and I alter the script a little bit, and start thinking of fun audio ways, like when the little comet hits the paper, just goes. There's just little things that once you start to see the visuals, like it fuels the creativity and generates more ideas. And I'm really loving that part of this process and the interplay of working with something like this where you can generate images really fast. And Adobe just updated their Firefly models, but there's also the beauty of like using something like this is it has all the other major models in here, most of them anyway. Nano Bananas in here, all the Flux models. So you have a lot of different choices. You can test out some ideas and get them in here. Now, as you can see, a lot of these were just early experiments. They're all one by one. I wasn't trying to get my final, images that I would use as start frames. To do that, I would go into a FreePik. Now, the nice thing is I have those previous images, so I could use them as image references if I really like them. And I could, when I'm generating my 16 by 9 high res versions, I could do them in this space and try out a whole bunch of different looks, tweak them. Sometimes I'm using Nano Banana. Sometimes, like you can see here, I'm using Dream 4K. Different models are going to give you different things or excel at different tasks. So the nice thing about FreePik is there's unlimited image generation if you're sort of in the top half of the plans, and just being able to not have that anxiety about burning credits and just trying and experimenting with different visual ideas and getting those start frames that you want. Now, all of these start frames are like, some of them are good enough, but most of them are like 90% there. And to get it the rest of the way where I can use it as a start frame for my image generation, I'm then taking that either into Photoshop, where I did a lot of my outpainting in Photoshop using their generative fill features and traditional Photoshop techniques I've used for years. But for a lot of the inpainting, I was using different workflows in ComfyUI. And so this is quite an image edit in Comfy Cloud. And this is where I would like upload a photo or start frame from the bathtub scene, and then that would allow me to sort of mask just the bathtub and try and get consistency with the bathtub shape, because the models really struggled with the water level in the tub and keeping the tub consistent. So making sure those things were like pretty close to being consistent there had to be done with some of this additional fine tuning at the end. And then once I had all those images, then I took them all over into Premiere Pro, and it starts to look like a more traditional workflow from there. So once I have all of my images from FreePik, I then bring them all into Premiere, and I treat this like the next stage in an animation project where I'm building an animatic. So I'm taking all of those images, putting them in a timeline, and starting to build out the actual sound design for the project. So I'm recording voices that I've done in ElevenLabs, but a lot of what I do at this stage does end up being a part of the final sound design. And the beauty of it is it gives me a really good sense of the timing of the project. So the most expensive part about making these AI films is the time and credits and money being spent on the video generation portion. So anything I can do here, just like in real animation workflows, you save time by nailing this kind of timing and story and pace at this stage. So I try to get my audio animatic to be as close to what the actual final audio design is going to look like. Once I have that, I then take my start frames from this, and I take them to FreePik to create all my video generations. And then I start layering that second video layer, which is all these rough AI videos. By rough, I mean like they're probably going to be what the final edit looks like, but they're only like 720p. In some cases, with some of the models, they're 480p. Eventually these will be up scaled to 4K. So I'm putting all that together in here, and this is the stage with these lower res versions of the files that I'm starting to work in. Other pieces, so graphics, I'll start putting in like these sparkly graphics for the unicorn and the dinosaur I did in After Effects, so they were consistent each time. All the charts were animated in After Effects. Anything that was a text overlay I did in After Effects. So a lot of After Effects or directly here in Premiere Pro. So getting those graphics in, really starting to fine tune the audio. And then I wait, and once I've got a finalized rough cut lock, that's when I finally go and take it and up, use the Topaz video upscaler, and I upscale all of these videos to 4K. And then that brings me into, my final 4K cut, which looks like this. And I generate the subtitles, the SRT files, so that it can be translated into other languages. And the final step when I'm exporting, one thing to note, there is one piece of real footage in here, and I shot this footage with the new Pixel 10 Pro because it has, I've got other cameras in the house, but what I wanted to use the Pixel 10 Pro because it has C2PA integration, which basically means that like there's data about the digital provenance of this video that travels all the way through this workflow. So when I go to export, and I strongly recommend that anybody, when they're working with AI film, and you're exporting, go all the way down to the bottom of the general tab and make sure you have export content credentials checked. This is just a really good way to make sure that most of the platforms are now part of the C2PA initiative, and this is a good way to be able to show your audience, yes, there is AI in it. This is how it's being used, and to just be transparent about the process. This is what sets this kind of creative AI work from what's being done by like bot farms and bad actors doing deep fakes. So I think it's important to establish this sort of digital provenance chain in these projects from the start. And so that's basically the workflow. And this is just episode 1. We're going to tackle energy, agriculture, construction, transportation, and all the complex challenges facing our changing climate. And I'm going to keep experimenting with these tools and see what's possible. And then I'll continue to be transparent about that process. And I hope you'll subscribe because the future of storytelling and the future of our climate are both evolving very fast. And it's going to be fascinating to see how this evolves month to month. So I hope you'll stay tuned. Thank you.